So PhD, yes. So the PhD was all about using vision systems to track cars for driverless car systems. So back in those early 90s, there was a big European project called, I think it was called Prometheus, and it was a collaboration of lots of universities all working on systems for future driverless cars. So a lot of people think driverless cars are a new thing. They're not at all, right? I mean, in fact, someone had, the previous work was done in the 80s where somebody had a driverless truck that crossed the US, the whole US, completely hands-free. So we started, there were dozens of PhD students loosely associated with this very big project. And my particular bit was tracking other cars. So there was a camera in the front of the car, and as other cars overtook, I had to figure out how to track all of these other cars automatically and write the software, to take those images and then track these other cars. And that's kind of what my PhD was. And working out how to do that fast. Because back then, of course, computers were very slow, and we had to use these, kind of small supercomputers to try at least prove the concept, hoping that in the future someone would invent much faster computers that could do it better. I mean, I now realize my phone is faster than those supercomputers I was using at the time. So after the PhD, in that PhD time, I met my wife, who was from Australia. She was, doing the usual kind of working holiday thing. So I met her, and of course I promised that once I'd finished my PhD, I would come back to Australia with her so she could finish her degree, which she did, and we came back in the beginning of 1995. At the time, I didn't. Again, it was hard because the internet was only in its infancy. So it was hard to find a job ahead of time. So I came with a couple of magazines of, I think it mentioned, a few universities and things like that. And when I arrived, I then started making contact with people. And one of the people I made contact with was Peter Cork, who had just moved to Brisbane himself from Melbourne. And he worked at CSIRO. I went, had a coffee with Peter out at the CSIRO facility, and with another gentleman called Graham Winstanley, who had worked at CSIRO for about a year. He'd previously come from QUT, where I now actually work. And anyway, we got talking, and it turned out I had some unique skills in running this particular type of computer system, which they had just purchased at CSIRO to do a whole lot of this same vision stuff. And I just happened to be one of the only people that knew how to run this stuff. So it was kind of a nice coincidence. And I started working there a few months later.